Elizabeth, just like her lover Meliodas, is known for having many different forms and transformations. And today, I'm going to be doing a video discussing Elizabeth's all forms. Because, a lot of people, they sleep on Elizabeth. But I'm just here to tell you why she's one of the best characters. But before I get to that, make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe to My Hero Academia channel. I will be uploading a super banger video over there today. So if you guys have not subscribed to that, make sure you guys go ahead and do that. But without further ado, let's go and get to the video. Now, we can see from her one-shot design, she looked completely different from what she was going to plan to be. Okay, it's not completely different, but it's drastically different enough to a point where you realize that it's not Elizabeth, because we see that she has sort of the same design, but we can see that the bangs, they don't really show her eyes, and we see that her eyes are fully exposed, and we see later on that she kind of does look like this. But it was interesting to find out that the one-shot design was going to be this one, because it was a lot of foreshadowing for a future design. And speaking of her future design, we got to discuss armor Elizabeth. Yes, we saw she was able to wear the Rust Knight armor. We got to give her some props, because the fact that a little girl, or not little girl, but a human girl, and I'm using air quotes, but a human girl at the time could walk around with that armor on is very impressive, because we seen that's what the 7 deadly sins had on. Obviously, she wasn't like doing flips and stuff in it, but I found that to be pretty impressive. And then we have to discuss Toddler Elizabeth. Now, I know some of you guys must be thinking, why are you bringing up Toddler Elizabeth? But just trust me, Toddler Elizabeth has a huge role in this series of 7 Deadly Sins, and we know that this is basically the beginning of her character. And like I said, this reoccurs later, spoilers without context. And we also do get a first sneak peek at Kid Elizabeth when she actually does like grow up a little bit. But I had to discuss the baby form of Elizabeth and the toddler form, because they play a huge pivotal role later on. And then we move on to the first form of Elizabeth, which we know that is when she first appeared in the little, after she took off the armor, that's when she had the little main look with the spandex on, which was her first look when she first met Meliodas and stuff. So cool stuff there. And then we move on to Boars Hat Elizabeth, which is kind of like the main Elizabeth that we're used to. This is when she first joined the Boars Hat, and we see this is the main look that she has, the one that makes Meliodas the most proud, if you guys know what I mean. But no, in all seriousness, this is Elizabeth's first form, or not first form, but the main form that she wears. But then we move on to Midget Elizabeth. Yes, and I don't want to offend anybody. If you are one of my subscribers and you're considered a midget, I'm sorry. But no, in all seriousness, we see that in the Vizel Festival arc. This is basically happened when her and Diane ended up working together, and this is what basically brought Diane and Elizabeth together once Elizabeth obviously got shrunk. Obviously, that whole arc was huge and all that stuff. One of the biggest early arcs in the series that led to Veronica actually giving Elizabeth her jacket, and that was actually a little mini new look for the time. So Midget Elizabeth, I definitely had to discuss that. But the next form that I had to discuss is Awakened Elizabeth. The reason why I'm saying that is because this is when she first awakened her goddess power in her dream. Now, this was one of the biggest things, because everybody was expecting Elizabeth to be in the goddess clan, but we didn't necessarily think that it was going to happen. And then we move on to the Great Festival arc, which was her newest, well, not newest, but anime only to them, that was one of her newer looks. And we saw that in that arc, the Great Festival arc, it was the biggest, to me personally, the biggest arc in the anime that we've seen so far. So the fact that Elizabeth got a new look for that arc goes to show you how big it is. But and then we move on to the goddess clan slash her current look, whereas we see she has shorter hair, both of her eyes are showing, and it resembles her one-shot appearance, which is why I was saying that her current look, like right now as a member of the goddess clan with her memories, she does look like her one-shot appearance. And the next form that I'm going to discuss it's kind of a multitude of forms, but regardless of the fact, it is Reincarnated Elizabeth. And the reason why I'm saying Reincarnated Elizabeth is because we know that when Elizabeth does die and whenever she's reincarnated, she has a chance to get reincarnated into different lifestyles. We saw there was a wilderness one when she was basically Tarzan. We see that she's got reincarnated as a basically princess. So the fact that she did actually go through all those different stages through reincarnation definitely does make me think that all her different forms just had to throw them in together for one little reincarnated thing, because Meliodas, he met multiple different lizards, including the firstborn of version of Liz. You know, obviously the one from 3,000 years ago, which is her final and the strongest form that I had to discuss, which was Elizabeth from 3,000 years ago. This was the strongest form of Elizabeth. She was known as Bloodstained Ellie, which means that she was handing out smoke to the demons back in the day. And the one that's different from this Elizabeth and all the other ones is she always had her wings out, and basically like how Mael or how the other archangels were. So I found that to be super excited about this Elizabeth, because we've seen Elizabeth, she does pull out her wings, her goddess wings sometimes, but she doesn't necessarily have them all the time. Whereas Elizabeth from 3,000 years ago, the bloodstained Elizabeth, the one who was on par with the 4 archangels Elizabeth, that one always had her wings out and she was always hype. And to be honest, like I said, this is the strongest form of Elizabeth, the most important form of Elizabeth. We haven't even seen her go all out, because we know that this is basically equivalent to the supreme deity. Yes, when Elizabeth is in this form, which she's going to unlock later on, that is when she has the supreme deity level of potential. And I definitely can't wait to see her reawaken the power from 3,000 years ago, because we saw she was able to stand up to a member of the 10 Commandments, and she ended up saving obviously the 10 Commandments life. So that just goes to show you how strong Elizabeth was from 3,000 years ago. And as for Elizabeth's final form, I don't think she's going to get too many new transformations unlike Meliodas, but I do believe that her final form is going to be something similar to a supreme deity. Yes, I do believe she's going to be able to harness her supreme deity power and use that in like a humanoid form, similar to how Meliodas can do with his Demon King form. I think Elizabeth, her final transformation is going to be something that resembles a supreme deity that will make her super strong and on par with Meliodas, and that will unlock her hidden potential from 3,000 years ago. But overall, what is your favorite form of Elizabeth? I'm not gonna lie, I do want to see more of the reincarnated Elizabeth, and the reason why I did bring up the toddler Elizabeth and all that stuff was because I do believe that, since obviously Elizabeth does get reincarnated and stuff, a little spoiler alert, that was one of the biggest forms, because Meliodas, he has to deal with Elizabeth every single time she gets reincarnated. He has to wait for her to grow back up and all that stuff again. He's been doing that for 3,000 years until the cycle of death kept on happening. So that's why I had to discuss every single form of Elizabeth. Comment what you guys think down below. Subscribe if you haven't. Peace out.